my name is Wolfgang Wischki, and I will be telling you about everything that happened in the US in the 1970s. But first, let me tell you about the zeitgeist of the people who lived in America during this period. US citizens were feeling fear from the possibility of war with the USSR. Those Russians. They were angry at the US government because of the wars. They felt economic struggle because of inflation. There was a lot of all-around panic feeling. But there was still happiness and joy, such as fans of rock music and people who love movies. Video games brought joy to lots with their new releases. But let's just get into it. Let us start from the beginning. The year was 1970, and the Vietnam War was still rolling. Rock was more popular than ever, but tragedy struck. The best rock band ever, the Beatles, disbanded, sadly. In the science world this year, NASA's Apollo 13 moon mission was launched on April 11th. The goal was to get 7 men to the moon, where they could stay for a couple of days. On their way to the moon, complications happened in their oxygen tank, and an explosion went off, which caused the abandonment of the mission. Luckily, all of the members of the crew made it down safely and were recovered April 17th by the USS Iwo Jima. In the diplomatic world this year, 43 nations ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is great news because nuclear weapons will not be spread so rapidly. Also, this will allow our nation to focus on nuclear energy, which is a good thing. In military news, the US invaded Cambodia. This was unexpected and even worse because the president didn't tell us. Just glad it was short, starting April 29th and ending on July 22nd. It did end as our occupation of the country. In commercial flight news, Boeing has just come out with the new Boeing 747, which will revolutionize flight. In one of the test flights, the Boeing 747 made a trip from New York to London, England.
Wow, that's a space jam-packed year!
This is only the beginning. The year is now 1971. In civil rights news, the U.S. voting age has been lowered from 21 to 18 years old.
Hold on. You're telling me I can vote before I can drink? How is that a good idea?
This was put in place with the 26th Amendment, which was ratified on July 1st. In the world of entertainment, the creator of many children's films, Walt Disney, opens up his Walt Disney World Resort, which is located in Orlando, Florida. And U.S. top secret information news, the Pentagon Papers, are published by the New York Times. This was a devastating hit to the government because it exposed all they did undercover and the real extent of what they did in Vietnam and other such cases. In technology news, Intel releases the first microprocessor, the 4004, which is the major event for the future, changing computers forever.
Quite intriguing.
The year is now 1972, and this is a little bit of a stumble for the government. Richard Nixon is caught sending White House operatives who burglarized the Democratic National Committee in the famous Watergate scandal. This eventually ends Nixon's presidential office years. In the gaming industry news, Pong has just been released. This is the first commercially successful video game and is a major landmark in the future of the gaming industry. In television entertainment news, the first U.S. cable subscription service, or HBO, is introduced. This brings a whole new way to watch TV at home. In presidential news, Nixon was elected, but not for long.
Like, gee, Scoop, that Nixon guy's like, not cool.
That's right, Shaggy, but wait, there's more. The year has now rolled over to 1973. In domestic events, crisis, and international news, the Arabs were holding their oil hostage and put the price up like crazy. This caused mass panic in the U.S., which relied heavily on the Middle Eastern oil to fuel pretty much everything. Citizens of the U.S. were lining up.
Hey, get a move on it! Move forward!
And were limited to only a few gallons per person. In NASA news, NASA has once again launched a rocket into space. This time, they sent up the Mariner 10, which is a probe. This probe becomes the first spacecraft to study Mercury. That's totally good for you to eat. It's not so good, and not so good civil rights news. Supreme Court declares abortion a constitutional right. This was a landmark decision on the Roe v. Wade case. In American tennis news, Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes tennis match. The sets were in Billie's favor, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3, the numbers of the beast.
Space.
Enough of space. Come back to Earth. Because this year, the year is now 1974. In presidential news, President Nixon finally got it. The Watergate scandal put him into court, and Nixon was forced to resign. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effectively at noon tomorrow. When he resigned, Gerald Ford became the President of the United States and instantly pardoned Nixon for his crimes he committed. In U.S. Postal Service news, the UPS barcode is created. This revolutionized the way things were shipped around the U.S. and the world, making the sending system faster, more efficient, and more likely to get your stuff where it needs to go.
You're telling me I can ship things to my friends even faster now?
That's awesome!
Now, moving on. The year is now 1975, and this is the year of great news. In U.S. military affair news, the Vietnam War has ended. This was after the slow removal of U.S. troops from Vietnam over the last couple of years. But sadly, as soon as the U.S. left, the Viet Cong took over Saigon and all of Vietnam. Making the whole point of the war non-existent, and many lives lost for no reason. In entertainment news, one of the greatest movies ever, Jaws, is released. This becomes an iconic film and one of the first blockbuster films. In Sony news, Sony has just released the Betamax videotape system, making it possible to save your favorite films for home. In technology and computer news, Bill Gates and Paul Allen create their company called Microsoft. This is a business of the future, and as we know, has a great impact on our lives today. In late night show news, the now very popular show called Saturday Night Live aired for the first time.
You know, because of Jaws, I don't like going in the ocean.
Same for me. That is a big shark. But now, the year is 1976. In technology news, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak created the Apple Computer Company. This is a very influential for the future. This will become one of the greatest companies alongside Microsoft and Sony. In space news, NASA introduced the first space shuttle, the Enterprise, making it more viable and easier to get into space, also allowing countries to send scientists, their own scientists, to the International Space Station, with much more ease. In presidential news, Jimmy Carter defeated Gerald Ford in the presidential race, making Jimmy Carter the new president of the United States.
Space shuttles are so cool, and they cost less than rockets!
That's right! The year is now 1977, and U.S. Foreign Affairs news. The U.S. removes its control of the Panama Canal, which I think is personally a loss, but being able to control trade in the Americas had part to play had a part to play because of the Panama Canal. In pipe news, the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline is open. This makes Alaska's oil industry so much greater, making it almost effortless to send oil from anywhere in the state to ports around the south coast, where it can be shipped to the rest of the U.S. In hospital technology news, the MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging scanner, is first tested. This is the future of prolonging human life. By the scanner's creation, it allows for doctors to see things they couldn't before and will allow them to react earlier to diseases and cancer. The year is now 1978. In newspaper news, the first Garfield comic is published in 41 U.S. newspapers. This is the premiere of something great. The Garfield comic was one of the longest running ever, and shows and movies were made from it, created from it. In video game news, Space Invaders is released. This becomes one of the greats in video games, and a doorway to many more. Not much else happened this year.
Garfield? I love Garfield. And lasagna.
I know, right? Lasagna's amazing, and so is Garfield. The year is now 1979. In Uh-Oh News, the 3 Mile Island nuclear incident occurs in Pennsylvania. This was when a reactor number 2 of the 3 had a partial meltdown. I'm melting. Oh, I'm okay. Where's my legs? If it was a full meltdown, the nearby populace would be in big trouble. In Sony Entertainment News, the Walkman is introduced. This was a major turning point in music on-the-go entertainment. The small device had the ability to play a cassette tape and had small, portable headphones, allowing the user to take it anywhere and enjoy their music. In Michael Jackson news, Michael Jackson debuts his first solo album, Off the Wall. Yeah.
Michael Jackson? I guess you could say don't stop till you get enough.
In the greatest planetary destruction,
We will destroy your home planet.
no, there's innocent people!
Too late. Pew!
Boom! No! Space fighting. This is Red Leader, checking in. Oh no, they're on my tail. No! Earth fighting.
There they are.
Rebel scum.
Why can't we hit them?
Obi-Wan Kenobi finding.
Hello there.
And mission-solving movie ever news. Star Wars Episode 4 is released, changing everything people knew about the possibility of movie creation and capturing a cinematic masterpiece for future generations to love and adore.
The creation of Star Wars changed the future of movie creation and film ideas forever. That is why it will always be one of my favorites.
I share the same opinion on that. One of the greats. But that's all, folks. For the news portion now, on to our interviews.
So we will be interviewing Mr. Lialios, and we're asking him about the 70s. So what do you remember most about the 1970s?
Well, being a kid, I remember a lot about the culture and the music and just things of that sort. So the music had gotten really big, was disco. And so that was probably, mid-70s to like 78. And then kind of the country western dance style kind of came in. We're all kind of instigated by John Travolta. But we were all rockers, right? We were into Led Zeppelin and some of these bands that are still big bands now. So as for the culture, politically, I remember a lot of that also, but that's what I remember the most. AM radio. FM was kind of, didn't really exist. It was starting to come on, but we would have little AM transistor radios, and that was just like the coolest thing because you'd raise the antenna and you could walk around with it and listen to music. It was just unheard of back then. So anyways, go ahead, Doug. Thanks.
Okay, for question 2, we'll ask, what were some major events that you remember from that time?
In the country, well, I remember the oil embargo because that was, we actually had 2 oil crises in the 70s. The early 70s, which you guys probably already studied on, and the embargo, when they were saying it was against Israel, it was really against the United States. They're trying to set a groundwork for OPEC so they could kind of control the oil market.
Yeah.
And so, in the later 70s, we also had another oil crisis where we had to actually wait in line for oil. And the day that you got to go was based on your license plate. If your license plate ended with an odd or even number, is how I remember it. I mean, that was a long time ago, of course, but I remember I had a moped and, I had a gallon. And I would sit in the line that was probably 10 blocks long, waiting for oil. And people would just go, man, you just got a moped, you only need a gallon. I'm a kid, I'm 13, 14 years old. And so that's how I got around. I was on a moped in Southern California. And they go, just cut up to the front of the line. And I was like, man, there's no way I'm cutting to the front of the line. Those people will kill me. Right? So we'd sit in line waiting for fuel. It was crazy.
Yep. Okay.
People would push their cars forward because they don't want to waste the gas. So that was that was during Jimmy Carter's reign.
Okay. And Carter. Okay. Next one. What did your daily routine look like?
Well, I was in school. Again, I was a young teenager, probably, I'm 55 now, so in 74 I was 10 years old, but back then it was different. So we were kind of set loose as kids, We didn't spend a lot of time at home, though we were home all the time, but there was a lot more freedom back then. So my daily routine consisted of, if school was on, riding my bike to school, right? Coming home, we hardly ever had homework, and just hanging out with my friends in the neighborhood till it was dark. And when it was dark, we had to be home for dinner. And that literally was 7 days a week. Obviously, 2 days a week wasn't school, but we were hardly ever inside.
Yeah, okay.
And plus, there wasn't a lot to watch on TV and stuff back then because there was 3 channels plus Channel 6, is how I remember it. And so you really, if there was something good on TV, as a family, you'd sit down and watch it, but most time there wasn't anything good on TV.
Okay. Sweet. And then, okay, so that covers that one already. Okay, so what did you watch? Is it on TV, in theaters, listen on the radios?
Back then?
Yeah.
He covered the radio.
Yeah, I know, theaters.
So on the radio was, we would listen to whatever the rock channel was. But the rock channels then, it's like you would have one channel, but it wouldn't just play rock, right? It would play rock, and then it would play some disco, and it played, not country, but like soft rock. So they would just shove everything into this one channel, because there wasn't a lot of those channels. Towards the later 70s, they started getting more radio stations, and FM became popular, and then you would have your designated channels. As for movies, of course, Star Trek was huge. I remember sitting in line in the theater that was across from Park Mall at the time. I don't remember the name of it, but sitting with my friend Jack Land, and the line actually went twice around the building. And we were waiting outside to get into the movie that was just, in reality, it was just okay. You know what I mean? But as a kid, you're just blown away. Like, they got these lightsabers, and you're like, oh my gosh, if I could have a lightsaber, that'd be the coolest thing in the world. And even if it didn't cut anybody, I mean, you were unheard of, but even something you were just holding your hand and light up was just unheard of. Mm-hmm. There was, as far as I know, there was no technology other than in Hollywood to even have something like that in your hand, other than a flashlight. You know what I mean? It just didn't exist. So, and what was the third one? I mean, we covered.
It's just more about like
what
TV.
What watch on TV?
Yeah.
$6 Million Man. No doubt.
I mentioned that in my paper.
Oh yeah, Lee Majors. He's married to Farrah Fawcett. I mean, we just watched the show was good, but we were like, oh my gosh, that guy's married to Farrah Fawcett.
Okay, then we'll do one more. What books do you remember reading?
back then, well, we always had book reports in school. So if you had a book, or if you were willing to give a book report, you get extra credit. So I did a lot of book reports. But back then, you could do a book report on a car, right? So literally, I could talk about the 1977 Ford Thunderbird, and I'd get an A in that. I get an A for the day. So, but some of the books was like Jonathan Siegel. There was some Edgar Allan Poe that I read that I always kind of found, very dark but kind of fascinating. But it was kind of creepy as a kid. I can't remember any other ones offhand, but
Yeah.
So it would just be whatever you would get in the school library.
Sweet. Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right.
"'Tis but a scratch.
Oh, it's not. You're missing an arm.
A scratch. Ah! He is the Messiah!
No, I'm not.
Always look on the bright side of life.